Hi, this is Sherry from SLS Event Planning. Welcome back to my channel. We're continuing our building block series, and today we're talking about room block. What is a room block and why is it important? A room block is what the hotel is looking for when you book an event with them. Is it necessary? Well, it depends on how large of a meeting space that you want to contract with them. Sometimes you can get away with not having a room block or maybe a very small one, depending on how many days that you plan to host your event there, what size of a meeting space that you need, and the revenue that you plan to give to the hotel, whether it's through food and beverage, rental, or a combination of the two. People need a place to stay. So if you have a lot of staff, a number of speakers, and even a large amount of attendees that you're expecting, then you may want to consider a room block with the hotel. Now, you can ask them if they'll do a courtesy block or a hospitality block. What that means is that you're not on the hook for making sure that those rooms are booked. They'll put aside sometimes between 10, 20 maximum is what the number I usually see, of a courtesy room block that's at a decent rate. It's usually a little higher than a typical group room block rate would be, but less than what someone would book if they went there directly themselves. And they'll put that aside for a number of weeks. Usually they'll cut it off about 30 days out from an event. If you do a room block with the hotel, you can generally get them to have the room block cutoff be about 2 to 3 weeks out from the event, and maybe even have them continue to receive rooms in your block past that cutoff date, depending on if they've got enough rooms left in their inventory or not. An additional benefit to having a room block with the hotel is not only getting a good group discount rate that is generally a lot lower than that they would do themselves if they went online or through a third-party site, but you usually can get more concessions from the hotel during contract negotiations. So if you decide going into it that you don't want a room block, but you'd like to have the hotel offer you some benefits or concessions for booking your event with them, they're not going to give up too much to you. I have an example for you. A client that I'm working with right now, we went into doing our site search without a room block because they had no history. This was their very first event, and they didn't want to be on a hook with worrying about meeting their rooms. However, going into this, I got a promotion from one of the properties that we were looking at for the event. If we had come to them and asked for 25 rooms for a block, we would be able to pick 3 more concessions. That's money back in my client's pocket for rooms that they would be able to offer to their attendees. So we had a discussion. Is it worth it to them to have a contracted room block of 25 rooms for their event for 2 nights, or go to a courtesy block of just a few rooms? We talked through what that meant, and they said, well, we're expecting 300 people here. I am pretty sure with the marketing that we have in place, we're going to be able to meet that room block. Let's move forward. So what that did is it brought them concessions to the table that they wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. They also had discounted rooms for their staff, and they also had rooms for their speakers that were coming, and a handful of the attendees, sort of like a first come, first basis, if you will, so they could use it to their advantage in the marketing of their event. Also, it opens up the doors to allow them to add more down the road. If you don't have a room block, contract it with the hotel, and you start running into a situation where your attendees are not booking. They're like, I'm sorry, I can't come. Give me a refund on my ticket because I can't find a place to stay. Then you're kind of stuck. So you need to take a look at where your event is going to be to make that decision as well. Some of the concessions that you can really work out with the hotel are commissions on the rooms in the room block. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to, at the end of the day, the attendees are booking and paying for their rooms, but you're getting paid in return? That's another benefit of having a room block. You usually can get some sort of a commission or a rebate back to your final bill at the end of the day. So that's another positive way of also looking at having a room block. The only thing that you really need to keep in mind is the location of the venue. Is your hotel that you're choosing near other properties, near other hotels in the area, where if for some reason they can go off to another area that they can walk to, or maybe there's a shuttle that they could take, or even a quick Uber ride, then those are other things that you could probably consider into play before making a decision of the room block. So do a little bit of homework, research the area that you want to have your event, and if there are other hotels within a walking distance for your attendees, then maybe you don't need to really focus or worry too much about a room block. Keeping the area in mind is also a great idea. So if you do happen to have a room block, just to make it more convenient for your attendees, your staff, and your speakers, as well as get those nice concessions I talked about, you may need to have an overflow property. Overflow means that if your room block is sold out and your hotel venue is sold out, they don't have any more rooms to be able to give to you or your attendees, then you need to look elsewhere in the area for them to be able to get a place to stay. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to go out and get another contract with another hotel. You could, of course, and be able to get a decent rate and offer those to your attendees. You're not going to really get much in concessions that way because you're not really bringing them anything other than hotel rooms, but you'll get a decent rate. You could ask for a courtesy or a hospitality room block with them where they only give you like 10 or 20 rooms at a nice rate, and you don't have to worry about making sure that they're all booked. Or you can just provide to your attendees through your marketing the list of the hotels in the area where they can just go to and say the average rate. It's really up to you and how much you want to be able to provide to your attendees with the ease of them knowing that they have to have a place to stay when they come to your event. Something else you need to keep in mind when deciding on a room block or not is knowing your audience. If most of your attendees are going to be flying into the event, then that means they are going to need a place to stay. But if you have a lot of local attendees, most of the time they're probably going to drive in each day to come to the event. So kind of keep that in mind. Know where the market is in your audience, if they're local or if most of them are traveling. Also know the type of audience. If you have an audience that is mostly younger people like millennials, a lot of times they will rather stay at an Airbnb or maybe even with a buddy in the area to keep down on costs. So keep that in mind as well, because a lot of times that could play into the factor of hurting you in your room block. The other thing to consider when you're doing a room block with the hotel is to check with them on the type of inventory they have, the type of rooms. What I mean by that is how many double rooms do they have? Do they have double doubles? Do they have queens? Do they have kings? Do they have suites? How many of those do they have? Why does that matter, you think? Well, if you have a type of attendees that like to come and share rooms, for example, if you're having some sort of workshop or boot camp or some kind of session where you've got professionals coming and they want their staff to come along, that's on their dime. So they're going to look for different ways that's going to save them money, which means that they're going to have their staff book rooms where they're sharing rooms, so they'll need double doubles. So make sure that you know all of that about your attendees as well before you go into booking your room block. Otherwise, most of the time, a hotel will just do what's called a run of house. You'll see the initials ROH on the contract. Run of house, what does that mean? It basically means when your attendee books a room, they're going to get whatever is available. You just need to know that up front so that when they book, they're able to book the type of room that they need. Knowing the audience and the attendees and the type of rooms they need will also help you determine how many rooms within the room block you're going to need. And going back to what I said earlier with if they're bringing their staff, let's say it's a registration, primary registration, and they're bringing 3 or 4 guests, what does that mean to your room block number and how many seats that you need for your attendee, for your meeting space, for example? I know it gets a little bit complicated when we talk about all of that, but it's important information for you to kind of map out prior to you taking the step of booking everything with the hotel. Last thing you want to do is put yourself in a situation where you contract with a run of house rooms, you start your marketing, and then 30 days, 45 days into the marketing, your room block is gone, and the hotel says to you, sorry, that's all we have. And then you've got attendees saying, I can't bring my staff because I'm not going to have them share rooms. You go back to the hotel and they say, well, we don't have double rooms, or we only have 10 or 20 double rooms. Then you're really stuck in a situation where you're going to have to do additional research, look around in the area, see what other hotels that are close by that can offer double rooms, and then get those and send that out to your attendees. So it's a lot of extra work afterwards that could result in you losing your attendees and having people cancel because you didn't take the time prior to make that research. So just do a little bit of homework. It's not that difficult to find places that will offer to you double or queen type rooms as well as king rooms. Just make sure that you put that into the contract itself when it comes time to making that decision. When you're working out the details with the hotel on your room block and the number of rooms in your room block, as well as the concessions, you need to keep in mind the days of your events. So let's say your event is Friday and Saturday. Your room block should be on Thursday night because people are probably going to be checking in on Thursday night with you so they can be there first thing Friday morning. And Friday night is typically the first peak night, so you're going to want more rooms on your first night of the event because you may have people that come in Friday morning versus Thursday night. And then on Saturday, you're going to have less rooms as well because a lot of people won't stay for the whole thing. Some people will leave out that afternoon, even if your event does end early, or if your event ends around 4 or 5 o'clock. If your event is in a location, though, where it's not really easy to get in and out of, or if it's more of a destination location, then keep that in mind too, because some people may stay over. They may make it a family vacation. They want to come in a few days prior or stay a few days later. And that brings me to my next point. Always make sure that if you have a room block group rate with the hotel, that you have a sentence in there that says they'll offer 3 days pre and 3 days post based on hotel availability. They will always put that in there as long as the words based on hotel inventory is in there. Why do you want that? Because the hotel will automatically put in a few hotel rooms into their inventory list on hotel registration. So when people go in to book, they'll put some in there, not a whole lot because you don't really have them contracted, but it'll allow people to go ahead and book automatically when they want to come in and leave out. So if you've got some attendees that wind up reaching out to you at some point through the marketing process of the event and they say, I'm trying to book a hotel room, but they're telling me you're sold out. And then you look at your availability and you see, I've got plenty of rooms. It most likely is because they're trying to book either 3 days, 1 or 2 days prior, or staying later, and the hotel doesn't have any left in there. Don't worry about it. All you got to do is reach out to the hotel representative. Hopefully they've assigned to you a reservation manager. And then you can reach out to them and say, hey, by the way, people are trying to book. Can you check your inventory? And oh, no problem. They'll usually add some more. You may get a little pushback depending on how many people are trying to book. And that's just history for you. Look at all of this as a learning lesson. Keep track of all of this. Make it a fun process for you. That way, next event, you'll know, okay, when I go to book another contract with a hotel, I know I may want to add a few more rooms contractually the day or two before or day or two after, or maybe add a little bit more on those end dates so that the hotel will make sure that they have quite a few availability for your attendees and you don't have to run into those issues like you did the last time. This brings me to a question of the day, if you will. You may say to me, Sherry, I've only got a 1-day event, or I'm doing maybe a 1.5-day event. Do I really need to have a room block? The answer to that would be, if your event is relatively small, I wouldn't worry about it. But if your event is in the 100s, like 100, 200, 300, or even more, you may want to consider having a very small one. And deciding on what night that should be would be dependent on what your schedule is. If your schedule is you're starting the afternoon of the first day, then yes, you're going to want to have a room block for that night. But if you're starting in the morning of that first day, then you may want to focus your little bit of room block on that night. So it really depends on what your schedule is. The way that the hotels look at it is they look at something that's called peak night. What's your peak night? Peak night is when most of your attendees are going to be there. It's typically the first full day of your event. will always be what they look at as the higher amount of number of rooms you should book in a room block contract. Here's a little tip for you. If you are fortunate enough to work out a concession with the hotel to get suite upgrades or discounted staff rooms or whatever when it regards to, those little special concessions that you're going to have for yourself, for your staff and speakers, make sure you have noted on the contract your check-in date and your check-out date. Don't just put it in there without it, because what happens is the hotel will only put in their system the dates of your group rate. And if you want to come early, or probably your staff is going to want to come at least one day early because they have to set up for the event. They can't just get there the day of. And we go to put that in the system with the hotel. They may say, well, I can put you in, but I can't offer you the staff discounted rate because it's not in your contract. So always make sure that you have whatever you have negotiated with them dated. Have it specifically put in there so that they don't turn around later and say, well, it's not in the contract, you can't hold me to it. I've had that happen before. Sometimes they're nice about it and they'll say, well, because our inventory is not so low, I'm okay to do it this time. So don't put yourself in that situation. Just make sure your dates are in your contract. What if you find yourself booking your event at a venue that's not really a hotel? Let's say you had to book at a convention center because of the size of event you're hosting or the type of event you're hosting, whether it's partially a trade show or an event with a live concert, whatever it may be, your reasoning behind doing it, you may think to yourself, do I need to worry about a room block? And if I do, what should I do? Well, luckily for you, if it's a convention center, most of the time hotels are within walking distance, and you may even have a hotel that's actually connected to convention centers. What I've been seeing the trend of lately is a lot of new convention centers that are being built are actually being built by the hotel or with the hotel connected to it right off the bat. And that means that the hotel will also have meeting space too. So if you need some private, intimate type of meeting space that a convention center typically won't have, or the style that you're looking for, say, an intimate VIP dinner or such, then the hotel will have that for you. And with them being attached to the convention center through some sort of skywalk or a walkway or even elevators, it will feel like it's all in the same space. You won't even feel like you're in a separate space until you realize you're in it. So think about that. If a convention center is the way that you need to go because of the size or type, look and see what kind of convention centers are around in the cities you want to be in that actually has a hotel connected to it. That is a lot more convenient for people than it would be for them to have to walk across the street. Why? Because most of the time convention centers are in a downtown location or in a city where walking across the street or such could be a little bit hazardous for them, and they just prefer not to do it. You never know what tells people, no, I don't want to go to this one, I'll go to the next one or someone else's event. So keep all of that in mind. Try to make it more convenient for your attendees. And doing so, finding a convention center with a hotel connected or right next to it. Another tip I want to offer to you is a little clause that I always love to have as part of my room block, and that is called a performance or / internet rate clause. That will help protect you in your room block performance. What does performance really mean? Well, let's say you have 100 rooms that you have to fulfill, and they want what's called an attrition from you. Let's say you were lucky enough to get a 20% attrition. That means that you have to make sure you block 80% of those rooms by the time your event is over. Otherwise, the hotel's going to come back to you and say, listen, you didn't meet all your room requirements, so you owe us. And then instead of attendees paying for it, you have to pay for it. That is everyone's worst nightmare when it comes to events. And another reason why a lot of my clients are just kind of leery on the whole room block situation. This is what two clauses really come into play that I really negotiate on behalf of my clients. One is, again, that performance internet rate clause. Basically tells the hotel that they have to do a cross-check. I'm not going to go through the wording of the actual clause, but what you need to do is make sure that you provide to the hotel your registration list. Usually you can get away with doing it beforehand so you kind of know where you are and after the event. and have them do a cross check. They're not going to give you their inventory, their registration, because it's against the law. But if you give them yours, they can see who booked outside of your room block. Because face it, a lot of people will book rooms through their Marriott reward points or Starwood points, whatever kind of hotel you're with. They're going to do it with their reward points because they want to save money. They also will do it on third-party sites. Whatever the cheapest rate they can buy, they are going to get. And unfortunately, they're out there. It's not always your group block rate. So if you have that clause in there that protects you, it's going to allow those rooms to count towards your performance. And that will help save you sometimes thousands of dollars. So make sure that you have that kind of clause within your hotel contract if you're going to be doing a room block. I want to wrap up with something that you might think of or not necessarily think of when it comes to a room block. Look at it as an investment on your event. Look at it as a way to make it convenient for your attendees to come to your event, have a place that's convenient for them to stay. Who wants to have to worry about catching an Uber or a shuttle that's going to take them several blocks or maybe even miles away from your event just because they want to save a few dollars? You can also do some sort of contest with it where the first 10 or the first 15 or 20 people who book their rooms, you can give them a gift certificate or credit towards their hotel room. Have fun with it. Make it part of your marketing. Make it a great takeaway for them, saying, I have a limited room block at this great rate that you want to take advantage of before it's gone. So use it within your marketing. Don't just look at it as, oh, this is something I've got to worry about with my revenue. Am I going to meet it? Am I not? There's lots of different great ways that you can make sure that the advantage of having a group block rated room to offer your attendees works to your advantage and not the other way around. I hope you enjoyed this video and got a lot of great information from what a room block means and why you need to consider it for your next event. If you would like to reach out to me directly, here's my email. Please don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the videos. I would love to hear from you, so please leave your comments below, and I'll see you next time.